Okay, we're ready when you are.
All right. It is 7:02 p.m. September 18th, 2023. This is the meeting of the Lafayette Transportation and Circulation Commission, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Why don't we just go down the line and say our names as a roll call. Carl DeGiorgio, Chair.
I'm Bart Carr, Commissioner. Greg Brown, Commissioner.
Stella Weatherspoon, Commissioner.
And Vianney may or may not be here later, and Lynn is on a leave of absence. So anybody want to change? Oh, the disclosure is that this is being broadcast online, and we give preference to people here in the physical audience. We try to accommodate people to call in, but you can't share anything visually. All right. Any changes to the agenda, or should we adopt it? Any changes? All right.
Move to adopt.
All right.
Second.
All right. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes. All right. We may or may not have somebody either here or online wanting to talk about something that's not on the agenda. So this is item 5, public comment, items not on the agenda. Do we have anybody online tonight?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, that's great. Last call. Okay. We don't have any old business to talk about that's scheduled. So let's move to item 7A, the candidate transportation grant projects item. Before we get going, I wanted to just want 2 comments. One is generally, I in my mind, when we first saw this item, I had hoped that this was going to be more of a discussion on the process that we are going to go through to help staff identify and apply for grants, rather than so much details. But there's nothing set in stone here. The call on this is to receive commissioner and public input, and so that's what we aim to do today. So, and then before you get going, as you get going, can you tell us, will this item then eventually be given to the city council?
Yes, it will.
Okay, all right, then why don't you take it away?
All right. So thank you, commissioners. I just want to kick off tonight's discussion with a bit of background and piggyback off of Chair Giorgio's remarks. So the intent of the meeting tonight is to raise public awareness of and hold a public discussion about the city projects that have been identified as potential recipients of potential future funding opportunities. So the need for this discussion arose over the past year as both the commission and members of the public have requested that citywide transportation projects be better understood in advance of the identification of funding sources for those projects. Typically, tight deadlines and grant applications and application processes preclude the ability of staff to identify projects through a public process as grant programs are announced, which speaks to the need to identify citywide priorities in advance. However, identification of a future project through this process does not preclude a public process if and when a project is funded. So as you're aware from my staff report, this process is merely intended to indicate whether a project may be a candidate for future funding. It's a high-level exercise to confirm citywide priorities in concept, not for project-level detailed discussion. And of course, if you would like to have a conversation about the process, that's welcome too, please. The projects on this list represent a broad mix of efforts of project types, phases, and modal priorities. So as an example, some of the efforts in the list would update a planning process, result in concept or detailed design, or move towards construction. Some of the projects are intended to improve safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, or expand the network for the active transportation users, and others would result in changes for drivers. And so it's important to note that the intent is not for projects to be prioritized against each other. Grant programs, as I indicated, are varied, and thus not all grant programs are appropriate for all project and project types. The idea is to have projects that are identified so that appropriate grant programs or other funding mechanisms might be sought. The list of projects also does not preclude the processes that have already been established. So as an example, a desire by a neighborhood for a traffic calming project would still go through the process set up by the traffic calming program. A desire for the city to design and construct a gap in pedestrian network would still work its way through the walkways master plan process. And finally, this process also does not indicate any timelines or certainty associated for any given project. The process will not identify appropriate grant programs because while some grant programs do recur on a predictable basis, others are less frequent or are one-time opportunities. And the amount of available grant funding in each of the programs can also range from year to year, even among recurring programs. So the discussion of each of these projects does not necessarily mean that they will result in projects that are ultimately implemented. And so with that, unless there are any other questions, there is a question.
Yes, would you mind, associated with each item?
Yeah.
There is a description of the phase being either planning, design, or construction. Would you please help us understand the difference between planning and design?
Planning phase is generally the public process, right? So it's, here's the intent of the project, here's the rationale behind it. Here are some of the trade-offs associated with it. You know, public, please give us your input and we will make adjustments, accordingly. Design is the actual engineering work, if it's a capital project.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. So I think I heard you say that you don't want us, or the discussion is not meant to prioritize these projects. So basically we're going to discuss them, better understand them. We could potentially pull a project if we don't believe it's a priority, or not a priority, but a worthwhile. And we can also add.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I didn't mean to cut off discussion, though. I mean, we could talk about how to prioritize projects. I'm there, but as Patrick mentioned, there's also different processes like the LRSP, which identified the dangerous street areas, and there's various plans we've had over years where we've talked about priorities within that, like the walkways plan. So I'm not trying to cut out anything. I just, I wasn't quite like ready to go one by one and say this one's better than that one, but we could talk about it or the process.
And the intent is not to say one is better than the other, right? So I want to be clear, right? It's to generate citywide priorities across the board for different project types and different projects, right? So that as grant opportunities are made available, the appropriate projects could be used to.
And I assume the way it works, we accept a batch or a group of projects, and this process here, and the council will approve that or make whatever changes they want to make to it. But once you have that group of projects, you'll look at you'll look at existing grant opportunities, and based on the project itself, you sort of make a determination of what might be a good candidate project for grant. Is that sort of the way it works?
Right.
Yes. Okay.
But in the case where you have two on this list that are both good candidates for a single grant, how do you decide?
Well, I can apply for both. Or it depends too on the amount of funding that we have, right? So typically there are matches that are local matches that are required as part of it, but not always. So one might be orders of magnitude more than another one. Or, I could come back here at that point and say, really, we've got two projects. We really only have the staff ability to address one of them. Which is a better candidate?
All other things being equal. Okay.
A few questions. One, I guess, my assumption is that some of these projects, could just go forward without a grant. I mean, some are pretty reasonable and, seem okay. So not everything we would have to wait on. A couple of others, and I look to you in terms of, my recollection is that for grants, the agencies like to have, sort of more shovel-ready actual projects. A couple places near we talk about updates to plans, which I'm wondering, in your experience, would those be as, I don't know if they'd be as attractive, you know, to grant makers?
I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to include that in my notes, my introductory notes. So some grants, for example, there have been 2 cycles of a Safe Routes to BART. I'm just giving one example, Safe Routes to BART grants, which actually came with a pretty high price tag in terms of a minimum and maximum amount of funding. They required detailed designs to be prepared, have already been prepared in order to be eligible for that grant. We didn't have any, so we had to let that grant go. So that is common in some of the grant programs that result in construction that you already have design or designs of up to like 65%. And so that's another advantage of going through this process is identifying projects, capital projects that we can advance design on, even if there's not today a grant opportunity that's available, right? We can prepare it so that we are better situated, or we can be more competitive.
And then just in terms of like the walkways and bike plans, and again, my recollection is you mentioned like maybe grant makers wouldn't be so excited about something like that as opposed to, you know, an actual project.
That's not true. There
No?
are
Okay.
there are grant programs that are more at the planning level.
Okay.
So we had a grant to do the LRSP, for example.
Okay.
So wide range of grant opportunities in the state. And I think it's fair too to say we don't have enough information at this point. If that's the way that the commission feels to say, yes, this should be a priority or not.
What, yeah, so I guess, and definitely want to go through this process, but my initial thoughts are, I mean, there's kind of a wide range of projects here with a wide range of either, you know, planning, design, or construction, and then a broad cost estimate. So it would be difficult to just say, we're going to rank them in the, you know, this rubric, you know, given who knows what the grant is that comes available, and so.
Right, my intent in preparing this list was understanding in the year plus that I've been here, what the priorities are in my mind, but also to get a wide range of project types and price tags.
Other comments, questions? Oh, I've got one other comment, and this is for, not so much for us right now, but for the next version that goes to the city council. What would be interesting is to see if you can include any information about when the last time we applied for a grant, you know, or for example, like the BART safe routes to BART, we said we missed those. And I know on the STIP we'll get to later. I was just wondering, you know, it'd be good to know, when did we last apply for it? And if they're every couple of years, if you have a ballpark on when the next opportunity might be. Now, you might not be able to tell, but that would be maybe or maybe not useful. I think just something for your consideration.
I have a follow-up question. I think you did apply for a grant for the Aqueduct Pathway project. Was that successful or unsuccessful? Okay, since it's here, I imagine that. Okay,
It was not successful.
thanks for trying.
Okay, anybody else? All right, you want to take us through some of
So
these?
I was gonna go one by one, but if you'd rather have a different process, that's fine too. Okay, I just,
Do we have any, like, have people raised their hands online yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so why don't we just then start going through it? I don't want to hold you here too long. But so why don't we go through these first and then we'll take public input? Is that okay with everybody?
Sounds good.
so you want me to go through everything at once rather than individual?
Well, what do you mean?
Well, I could stop for discussion after each of the
Oh.
9 projects, or,
Why don't we just interrupt if we have questions?
okay. That's fine too. Okay, so the first project on the list is the East Bay Mud Aqueduct Pathway. As you might be aware, this is not a new project, but one that was completed in 2012 to evaluate feasibility and design options for a pedestrian and bicycle pathway along the east-west East Bay Mud Aqueduct right-of-way through downtown Lafayette. So there's a desire to resurrect this plan, particularly given the expected number of housing sites expected to be constructed downtown, as identified as part of the housing element update. And this would result in the need to reevaluate the concept designs that were prepared a decade ago, and ideally advance those designs through the detailed design phase in order to prep some of those blocks for construction. So portions of the pathway have been completed along the west end of the pathway as part of largely as part of the offsite requirements associated with the new housing developments over there, kind of east of around Louisa Road. But currently the pathway ends at Dolores Street. So this project should be reconsidered, giving recent updates to our general plan elements, and should explore connections to key destinations such as BART, some of the commercial activity in downtown, the expanding pathway network along First Street and School Street, and the Lafayette Moraga Trail.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
As you said, this has been studied, discussed for a number of years now. Has anything happened recently that has changed, would potentially change our approach on how this would be constructed? Especially in those more challenging locations like crossing Oak Hill or crossing First Street. Well, I guess you could traverse the area behind the Safeway store in McCullis because there is a pathway back there. But just getting across those streets with ADA considerations that have to be addressed. Is there something new to that, or is that still going to be a big challenge? And
It's going to be still a huge challenge. We'd like to stay away from Caltrans right away to make that a little bit easier. And I believe that the existing plan did encroach into Caltrans right of way, and in some cases required slight relocation of the off ramp at Oak Hill. And we'd love to explore the concept of the bridges over the cross streets as well.
okay, or would it be contemplated that you would just build, either on one side of go from Dolores to Oak Hill, and then you would have a big gap, and then you would go do something like that. So you'd have basically a trail that would have the gaps in it.
Well, I think that's the way the construction would be phased, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be as funding permits or as housing developments are constructed.
Okay.
But I'd love to have detailed design for the Dolores to Brown Street segment completed so that we're ready to go if and when.
I personally think it's a worthwhile project. It's got challenges, obviously, but it's worthwhile as an alternative to Mount Diablo Boulevard.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you.
All right, next on the list is the bike and walkways master plan updates. So master plans for the pedestrian and bicycle networks are intended to articulate a shared vision for how people walk and bike around the city, design standards and priorities. They also include a comprehensive framework for implementation. The city prepared master plans for both of these modes in the past, but they are quite old at this point and may not reflect our current priorities, design standards, existing gaps in those networks, and our ultimate vision for build out of the networks. The Bikeways Master Plan is dated from 2006, and the Walkways Master Plan was also last completed in that year, but have been updated a few times over the years. Ideally, updates to the plan should reflect the technical feasibility and complexity of the desired projects as well, so that a better understanding of the constructability and associated cost implications of each project can be better understood and articulated. Finally, and very importantly, updates to these master plans can potentially better help the city position itself to be competitive for future grant opportunities for construction of identified priority projects. Next project, traffic signal design and construction at Deer Hill and Oak Hill roads. So this would result in the full signalization of that intersection. As you're aware, this is a multi-lane intersection adjacent to the BART station, and that sits on both the city's bicycle network and the high injury network. Signalization may also help to address right-of-way confusion for drivers and make crossings for pedestrians and cyclists a little bit more comfortable than they are today. They could also help facilitate any proposed pedestrian or bicycle improvement through this intersection, as identified through the updates to those master plans. So we may want to upgrade our vision of what we anticipate the bike network to be along Deer Hill Road.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For this one, was
Mhm.
this one in the downtown congestion management study?
That's a good question.
Do you
I don't-
recall, I know there was a signal on Deer Hill, I can't remember if it was Happy Valley Road or Oak Hill.
I don't know.
Okay,
This project would be expensive, however, it's unclear today whether or not there's any grant programs that would fund this project. But if and when the BART parking lots are redeveloped by BART in the future for housing, this could be a candidate for off-site improvements as part of that effort. Yeah,
sorry, I'm just thinking, I know we not too long ago, we reviewed a project proposal on Oak Hill Road that's just south of the Edmund right of way.
Mhm.
We had discussions there about, a signal. Manage that increased volume perhaps for residential use and then also the off ramp. That's close to here, so I'm just
yeah,
thinking about the two.
I can circle back with the planning department to find out, how far off the site we can go.
Mhm.
And what their requirements are today. Meaning,
Mhm.
they may have already allocated all the offsite improvement funds, but I can find out, I can track down.
Yeah, yeah, I understand this intersection and the need there, but I think that points were good that came up at that past transfer meeting. Where it's combined, I think, design review and transfer, when we talked
That's
about
right.
that project, just because
And
it is a slight curve, and planning was there, yeah, it's a slight curve, and people really do, come down, it's also downhill a little bit.
That's right.
Fast with the off-ramp folks kind of training their necks to look
Mhm.
left or right.
Okay. So right turn on right red restrictions at Moraga and Mount Diablo, not far from here. So this would result in a right turn on red restriction for drivers traveling northbound on Moraga Road to eastbound Mount Diablo Boulevard, similar to the restriction implemented at Moraga and Brook Street. So when a pedestrian activates the walk button on the north-south crosswalk on the east leg of the intersection, drivers would be restricted from turning right on red, and this would be communicated to them via an LED sign. This intersection is the most commented location to the city, both through the LRSP process, but also just through more informal communication such as emails and phone calls. Engineering department has already installed a number of safety measures at this intersection, including a pedestrian warning sign that's activated by pedestrians. But this would provide the additional level of protection for those who are walking through the intersection. I do want to note, though, the staff report does indicate that this is a traffic study and the cost estimate is meant more for implementation. Sorry for that confusion.
So this says traffic study, but it's for implementation?
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a need to study the impact?
I asked Mike and he said no.
Okay, discuss that.
Yeah, we could discuss that.
So when you say right turn red, so really you're just like the Moraga Brook, so only
Mhm.
activated on the PED call button.
That's right.
And so that will basically help people who want to go north-south on the east leg, but also on the south leg, I think. If you're trying to cross, say, from the Plaza Park to go west.
Yes, that would reduce that conflict too,
Yeah.
or eliminate it.
That's what I was thinking, yeah, because if you have the right of way of the green
Mhm.
pedestrian,
That's
people
right.
are constantly turning right there.
Right.
Okay, and that's the one that I think I see as higher volume crossings.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, the cost estimate for this is, that's just for a study.
For the,
Use-
no,
no.
for the installation of the sign
Okay,
and adjusting the signal.
okay.
I would like to expand this item to also include the on First Street, the southbound First Street, right at the Union 76 there. Southbound First Street, the right turn on Mount Diablo Boulevard. So people come down the hill past Whole Foods and they take a right to go onto Mount Diablo Boulevard, heading past Taco Bell up back towards, okay. In the past, we've talked informally in this group about the danger to pedestrians. People are trying to make a very quick right turn there, so that might be something to add to this item.
Thank you for that comment. That did come here a number of months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Next item, Moraga Road Safety and Circulation. So this project would be a planning effort to help the city identify potential future opportunities for improvements along Moraga Road in advance of our resurfacing effort expected in 2026. So as everyone knows, Moraga Road serves many functions. It's one of the few key arterial roadways in Lafayette, carrying lots of traffic. It's on the city's high entry network. It's on the bicycle and pedestrian networks, carries public transit, and it provides access to 2 city schools and the city's downtown. So it serves a lot of purposes. It's also an identified evacuation route.
Yeah.
So after the roadways resurface, there may be opportunities to make changes on how Moraga Road operates for any or all of the modes. And this should be reflected through a public process that would need to be held in a relatively short order in order to meet the road work timeline that's anticipated.
What is that timeline? The 2026 is the summertime, the summer repaving work.
Yeah,
So that's a good one.
roughly fall of 2025.
Hmm. Okay, and this would be basically like a road diet?
No, well, I mean, that's one option, but I mean, there are limited opportunities without moving the curbs, but through that process, where you could explore opportunities for a future capital project, right? But for the resurfacing effort, generally it's improvements within the existing curb lines,
Mhm.
including signal timing changes or other efforts that are
Mhm.
easy to implement once the paving's done and the roads restriped.
Mhm. Okay, so it could be lane reconfiguration and
Yeah.
such.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So would you want to get, use this grant in order to secure planning and design work done by a consultant, I assume, prior to public input, or does that come after how does that all?
Well, the planning process would be that, hey, public, come and tell us what your vision it might be for Moraga Road.
Okay,
And then the design would be kind of iterative with that process, but
okay.
yeah.
So, and that would happen sometime, as you say, in 2025 then?
That would be, you need a vision or you need a design by roughly, fall, winter of 2025
Okay,
in order to meet a summer 2026 resurfacing schedule.
okay. So just about early in 2025, I think, is when we would have that discussion, get the input, that kind of thing, just sort of very roughly fit into that.
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
So just a question for this one, if say the design was to reduce the travel lanes, wouldn't you need traffic study for this to be
You
a
would,
part of it?
for Moraga Road, sure, you would, yes.
So does the cost estimate encompass that, or is it
It should, yes,
larger?
no.
Okay, and I don't know what timing wise you're thinking for right turn on red restrictions, but it seems like because it's all Moraga Road and that's the terminal intersection, that it's all linked. And that if there's a study of changes on one, it should probably also look at the right turn on red change.
And important to note that planning department will be leading a Mount Diablo Boulevard corridor study as well
Mhm.
in the upcoming year.
Okay.
And so the previous comment about this is also part of a downtown specific plan changes or?
Yeah, the downtown specific plan, I believe what they're doing is they're focusing on Mount Diablo Boulevard.
Okay.
Okay. Saint Mary Road pickup and drop off. So our upcoming pathways project will result in the construction of pedestrian and bicycle pathways along School Street and Topper Lane. But in response to public input, we've also allocated funding for the design of an alternate pickup and drop off area for Stanley Middle School along St. Mary's Road, with corresponding sidewalk construction along the north side of St. Mary's Road from Acampo, where it currently ends, to Topper Lane. So, but as opposed to the pathways component of the project, this portion of the project along St. Mary's Road does not have funding for construction. Funding would allow the project to provide a holistic set of improvements around much of the perimeter of Stanley Middle School area. But the amount of funding needed for construction is unknown at this time until the planning process works its way through.
If I can interrupt for 1 second, and this is more of a general question, but also for when you mentioned there's no funding on this item. I can't remember the name of the group, but the city has a lobbyist group that informs them on Sacramento policies. Does that group also look for funding opportunities?
They do,
Okay,
they do.
and I just wanted to see if can we, maybe not this one, but in general, can we ask them to look for funding for specific projects, or they are only listening for what they hear is coming?
They generally provide, I don't know if it's monthly or every 2 months, but they provide a report to the city that says, here are some upcoming funding opportunities. It's not just transportation, it's everything.
Yeah.
You know, we can ask them for their advice on, you know, if we have a particular project. Do you feel that there's an appropriate grant for that?
Yeah, I wondered if there was a state equivalent of an earmark, you know, type projects that maybe would, you know, that's where I'm.
Yeah.
Patrick, on this one, you know, during the Safe Routes to Schools, the whole process, we heard from a lot of stakeholders that, you know, this was a very important project. I just have a question on the timing. So the planning and design work is underway, but it's not expected to be completed till mid-25. Is that
For the project as a whole, right? So the pathway project and the drop off project.
okay? So, all right, that still seems sort of lengthy but
Yeah.
you know, for that, because that was we heard over and over again from folks that was something they really wanted to
We're
look at.
anticipating an extensive public process for that project, and then also we have to take it through detailed design because we are going out for construction on at least the pathways.
Would it speed up anything to split them into separate projects, or is that possible? Funding wouldn't allow that?
No, we've got several different funding sources that have all been pulled together into one. It is possible if there's consensus on the pickup and drop off area design to advance that.
I think
I don't
that
know if
project has a lot of opportunity for a lot of the population that is involved in traffic in the area.
There's a lot of interest.
Yeah.
In the drop off on St. Mary's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so I just thought if it would speed up the process by splitting it, then I think it's something you might want to consider.
I agree with that.
Okay. The next project is the Pleasant Hill Road Pathway Project. This is a project currently going through the public process. Currently, the city has funding to prepare designs for a center median pathway along Pleasant Hill Road through the interchange with State Route 24, but no identified funding for construction. This project has been discussed a few times both here and at the city council. And I do want to provide a quick process update before discussion begins on this item. that staff has been instructed by council at a past meeting to complete the detailed design for the project, but also explore the feasibility of other potential alignments primarily along the east side of the street. So Matt Luttropp is going to be going back to council next month with an update and response to council's questions. So that is coming.
Is there a more general, or is a general timing on the completion of the planning and design work, or?
I mean, it depends on whether or not council wants to then say, well, okay, here's some additional funding to explore alignment options on the east side or another option. So I can let Matt work that out with council next month.
I thought I read that staff went to the council, I believe in May, and provided a report on alternatives. And basically their conclusion was that there were no viable alternatives to what was being considered. Is that not correct? Are these,
That's not correct, no.
alternatives still-
The meeting, as I believe, the feedback that he got was more about, for the center median pathway, would we remove the bike lanes? How do we address the reduction in the buffer between the travel lanes and the pedestrian area as it occurred in some areas? And hey, staff, can you go to Caltrans and find out if they would consider alternate alignments and what would be involved in that process and what some of the trade-offs might be. So that's what Matt is preparing to discuss next month.
So the city and staff are still looking at alternatives to the center median pathway.
Conceptually,
Conceptually, yeah.
yes.
I recall that there was a July or June meeting with council where Matt brought back some kind of estimates for
Which meeting?
doing some analysis.
I'm sorry, 1 second. Will you repeat your question, please?
Sure, yeah, so I'm just remembering that there was a June meeting, council meeting, where they had asked Matt to bring back some estimates for doing some exploration of alternative designs. And what I recall was that they didn't make any determination on that yet, that the Caltrans discussion was one of the action items. But another was, I believe Mayor and Jury had asked for outreach to Akalani's high school.
That and fire and police,
Okay.
Yeah.
So Matt will be reporting on all
all
of
of
that.
those, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Sidewalk construction. So despite citywide efforts to fill gaps in the pedestrian network across Lafayette, there are still many identified gaps from the walkways master plan. Ideally, for reasons that I've already mentioned, an update to the walkways master plan is justified. And this would result in an updated prioritized list with rough cost estimates to complete the existing gaps. This effort would seek funding to conduct detailed design and construction of some of the higher priority walkways. Today, I would not need to understand which of these priority projects should become funded because this would be worked out through the process of updating the walkways master plan. But want to add this project seeking funding for actual construction as a placeholder for future prioritization of walkways construction.
In public comment, we received a request to take a look at Akalani's Road.
Yes,
Apparently a walkway along Akalani's Road that is in disrepair. Based on just the description provided in that public comment, it seems like that would warrant potentially being added to this list. I don't know if you're familiar with that area or not. But,
I am. I think we're going to have a public comment on it tonight. I have been working with the resident there, and we'll be meeting him in the field next week with Matt Luttropp.
Okay.
For the discussion.
Just a general comment about this item. I know that these aren't prioritized, but in terms of grouping, you might want to group that with right below the walkways and masters plan. So that when you present it to the city council, you'll say, oh, first one is planning and the next one is the design and construction. Just logically, they seem to pair. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
And then the last project are the school safety projects. So, as this commission is aware, the city went through a process in 2021 to identify safety issues around schools and prepare a list of measures to address those issues. From that list, this commission prioritized a subset of projects, and council allocated about $1.3 million towards the design and construction of those measures. But we would need additional funding to design and implement the remainder of engineering projects that were identified through that process.
Are there many of the projects?
There are, if you, I mean, they were grouped into short, medium, long term. Many of the long term projects would need considerable amount of funding.
Oh, I thought this was just the ones that council approved.
No, those will be taken care of with the $1.3 million. These are the projects that were identified in the tool report that were not prioritized.
Yeah, okay. And I guess, would there be a process for prioritizing?
I think there should be,
Long list.
because some of the projects may be determined that, hey, you know, you giving an example, you put some great measures along Stanley Boulevard, we don't necessarily need X, Y, or Z anymore because of
Right.
that, yeah. So I think we should examine which projects are still in need.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I believe the process was done during COVID, and so having schools open probably is a benefit to the process as well.
Yeah, although I think they were in session when we were doing the walkabouts.
Oh, were they? Okay,
Yeah.
fully in session? Okay,
Yeah, they
never mind then.
they were, yeah. There was no one in session for the safe track report.
Okay, yeah,
That was
right.
pure COVID.
Mhm.
So the discussion earlier of having shovel-ready projects, it might make sense because seems as though school funding opportunities might come up more often than other types, that we really look to see what can be presented as soon as possible if an opportunity comes up. So I don't know how that affects your thinking on terms of analyzing the opportunities, but that's just my feeling is that if we're ready to jump on school projects, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, there's two raised sidewalks or raised crosswalks that are pending, and so it wasn't clear to me if that was just timing, like trying to get the crews and such in the summertime, or if it was that money's run out.
No, it wasn't money. It was staff time to do the design and in a very short window in which construction could have happened. So
Okay.
right now, Mike is hoping to get that done during Christmas break.
Oh, okay, all right,
It's hoping.
I know. We're holding to it, but, okay.
Before we move into the grant programs, and we'll ask again later, opportunity for commissioners to, if there's anything that's been left off the list. And you can think about it during the next section also, but I didn't come up with any. I just want to prompt people for, and the public also that we, if there's any projects that we should include or think about. That's
And I don't necessarily need to go through, I don't think the grant programs, unless there are questions, really, this was meant to just provide the range of grant opportunities. The first kind of cluster of grants are grants that are regularly occurring. And that we count on seeing at least every year or a couple of years. And then the second set are grants that we have either sought or have come across my desk recently, but may not come across my desk again. So, but you can see the wide range in project types and funding sources, what they emphasize. So there are quite a few of them. This is really just a sample.
This was really good. I found this very informational. And I mean, and this is not easy. I mean, just because there's so many grants this isn't easy money. There's a lot of work that goes into applying for these grants. You're
Yeah.
competing in most cases, you're competing against other jurisdictions for the money, so takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question, about a past grant application for that TDA, the Spring Hill, or the Pleasant Hill Road, Rearland's parking lot to Spring Hill Road.
Mhm.
Did
We were successful.
Oh.
I found out last week.
Yeah,
I was gonna save that for staff reports.
Okay. We'll come
So
back.
that one was successful.
Okay.
So that was $100,000.
Nice.
And then I was also successful in and maybe I've already reported this, the MTC's local parking management program, which is on the may not come by my desk again. So I obtained $170,000 that will be used for an update of a parking plan for downtown that can help kick things off with the update to Mount Diablo Boulevard and potentially East Bay Mud Aqueduct Pathway. And also, if there is a loss of parking at the parking lots, we can start that conversation now. So that was 170,000 with no local match. So that was a big win.
Yeah, that is, that's really great, very important.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned, because I was gonna ask, I hadn't heard of that, so that's fantastic.
Mhm.
And with that, I assume we'll also include the new properties that the city
That's right.
has purchased now. Okay. All right. Should we move to public comment at this point? You good with that? Okay. So we're gonna take public comment on this item. We're gonna start with people that are in the physically in the room here, and then we'll take comments online. So do you wanna come up and announce yourself? And before we, yeah, go ahead.
So 3 minutes?
Yes, let's start with 3 minutes. And I want to also point out to the public that the next speaker had submitted a letter. That letter is online. So if you hadn't seen it before, you're welcome to go back and look at that later. Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm Bob Russell. I live at 4056 Valenti Court, Lafayette. Valenti Court, the west side of town, right on Ocalanes Road. And there were two potential projects we'd like you to consider to put on this list of potential grant opportunities. One is for traffic calming measures on Ocalanes, basically heading northbound, which is kind of coming down the hill from Hidden Valley down to the freeway. And if you know that area at all, a lot of folks that are coming from Orinda, Moraga, Lafayette, after they make the torturous way down Glorietta, they are doing breakneck speeds coming down to Mount Diablo and then trying to hit the freeway. So there's a lot of near misses. I personally went as we try to make a left out of Lenny Court. It's kind of a blind side coming out of there. So Officer Andrew Conley is working with the police department right now on doing the Slow Down Lafayette program. They're doing traffic counts, speed counts, and going to do an analysis of how long it's going to, opportunities there. And I know he's working with Patrick on traffic calming measures, but at least to put us on the list would allow us the opportunity to be considered for that. And I'm currently doing the petition to our community to get all the signatures down, and that's due by September 30th. The next one is, as was mentioned, the Ocalanes Road sidewalk. I'm trying to keep honoring the time here. And that's about a roughly 600-foot length of sidewalk, and it didn't quite come out if you had a black and white copy. The color version is much better to see where the area that's missing. I guess you do have a color version. That's great. Thank you. That area is mostly concrete down from Hidden Valley, about close to Valenti Drive, and then it's kind of a mix of rocks and dirt and et cetera. The current sidewalk, as I said, is concrete, varies somewhere between 3.5 and 4 feet in width. But currently, I've seen people that, because they can't pass through there because of poles, impediments, et cetera. They have to take their baby stroller and put it out on the street. Elderly people coming on and off the curbs. It's a very dangerous situation. So we'd like that. Our concern is that I know it's going to be it is part of the walkways plan. It's currently a priority 2. We've been on the plan for about 10 years, maybe a little longer. The current estimate, I haven't actually seen the details of it, but they say it's about $250,000, which we're not sure how they came up with that number, but we realize that to get $125,000 to do a walkways update and then another $250,000 to do a sidewalk we'll never see that sidewalk in my lifetime. So we're asking, I guess, one, if it can either be put as a higher priority. I don't, if we don't get a grant for the walkways plan, maybe a way to look at it individually. And then also a way to do it much more affordably. We don't need, the Taj Mahal. We just want some concrete sidewalk where there's an accessible path and some of the impediments like poles, landscaping, and or mailbox, or one mailbox in our whole neighborhood, maybe moved or allocated at least a little bit outward, be done that way. So, and as Patrick mentioned, she's going to meet me out there next week. We're going to walk it, take a look at what the opportunities are to find maybe an affordable solution.
Thank you for those comments and for your letter. There's been, for the members of the commission that didn't know, there's been a lot of back and forth on this topic, partly because, and I don't recall the dates right off the hand, but the Transportation Commission had gone to that site and had examined it at one point. We had discussed that in a meeting. So it's not a new issue. It's something that has been on the radar for a while. So thank you for those comments. We'll come back and talk about it later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Speakers online?
Yeah, first up, we have Joe Thomas. You could please unmute yourself.
Hello,
Hi there.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so this is on the Pleasant Hill Road center median bike path. I know this has been talked about at excess for many months now. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to speak at the last city council meeting, so I kind of want to speak tonight and going forward. And I'll start out. I wrote a couple things down. I want to start out with demand and use. I've made a point of asking over the last 3 months, I reached over 100 people in the community about this project. The majority of them have no clue about the project. So the knowledge of that there's going to be a center median put in to Pleasant Hill Road is not known. Once I explain this to them, how the project's going to go forward, or the people who already know, I have not found not one response that has been positive that this would be something that they would want to be implemented. One of the main things is lack of use. They don't think it will be used. You building this huge, I don't know how wide it's going to be. I think it was about 18 feet, 20 feet, something like that total. And you're building something for, I'm not sure who. There's safety concerns at both of the intersections that is going to cause way more safety concerns at the Mount Diablo intersection and at the Stanley intersection. And then, of course, there's traffic increase concerns, huge traffic increase concerns. And that may be far down the city's list, but it shouldn't be, because it's something that is a headache. People are frustrated by it. And there is going to be, if it's used, which it's supposed to be, and every time that someone clicks that button to go into the center median, then there'll be more waiting time and more traffic. And so kind of the next thing is, who is this for? It's clearly not for pedestrians. I've talked to so many people about this. People are still going to use the east sidewalk for walking, for running, I ran cross country. I run track my whole life. I ran for Akalani's. Now I'm a cross country and track coach. We will not use the center median to run. We will use the east sidewalk to run. That's hundreds of kids on a daily basis using the east sidewalk to run. The thought that they are going to go into the center of Pleasant Hill Road to run a quarter mile and then stop and then wait again and then run out of the center median is just unheard of. It's just not going to happen. I've never felt unsafe. My family members have never felt unsafe. I've never heard anyone feel unsafe walking or running down that Pleasant Hill corridor. Yes, there are. You're going across on and off ramps, but
Okay, I'm sorry, but you're out of time. I didn't hear a bell. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Anyways,
So you want to wrap up then?
I'll wrap it real quick. I just think traffic wise, safety wise, but mostly use wise. I don't know who it's for. This is not for professional experienced bike riders. It may be for a group of 10 high school riders who may or may not use this. I just don't get this project. I've never understood it, and no one around me, other than like a couple people I've seen online or a couple things, have supported this. Anyways, I'm done.
No, thank you very much for your comments. Any questions for the speaker?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that cross-country and track teams use the east side sidewalk?
Sorry,
Still
Jeffrey.
with
I
us?
have to unmute again.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and so is that part of their daily training routine?
I mean, they don't always run down that, but so I ran for Akalani's, graduated in 07. And we ran down that quite a bit because we running to the Lafayette Bike Trail was one of our runs. Doing Old Tunnel Road was one of our runs. Various runs. We would use that to either go south or north on Pleasant Hill Road, and we would always use that. Never felt unsafe. There was never a major accident. And go ahead. And what I'm trying to say is we will not use. I'm coaching now. The center median won't be used. These kids will not use that. It doesn't make any sense. It will take too much time. The thought of increased safety doesn't make any sense. And what's frustrating, I just need to say one thing. What's frustrating is I've talked to so many Akalani's people, and no one is for this. I talked to a staff member that had no clue about it. I mean, it's beyond belief that we've gotten this far on this project, and that people not only are not knowledgeable of it, but are not in support. I'm happy to do a petition of how many people are not in support of this. So,
well, I think what'll happen. Thank you for your comments. I think what you'll find is you'll have an opportunity before the city council next month sometime. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Jared Yamasaki.
Is the bell gonna work?
It should work, yeah. You should, the timer's on the screen, so just see.
Yeah, I'll have to.
Or they may not be able to see it.
Oh, they can see it.
Okay.
So it should.
Hi,
Sorry.
can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Jared Yamasaki. I live in the Akalani's Avenue neighborhood. And I'm commenting on the Pleasant Hill Road Center Median Pathway. And I'm opposed to pursuing any further grant funding on that, but I would be in support of an alternate study for the east of Pleasant Hill Road. And now that we're talking about potentially going back to city council next month with a staff report, maybe now would be a great time to probably put this on the list for potential funding. And similar to the RFP process, where you put out a contract for bid and there's a competitive bid process and the contract is awarded based on merit, I think this should be the same thing, where you have multiple options to select from and select the safest and most desirable option. So I would be in support of an alternate study for another path other than the center median.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for your time.
All right, next up, we have Michelle Greer. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Michelle Greer. I live at 1002 Circle Creek Drive in Lafayette in the Acalanes Avenue neighborhood. I'm calling in this evening to say that I am opposed to the center of the median pathway on Pleasant Hill Road. Just given all of the previous commenters' points, but to add on, as a mom who walks her daughter to Spring Hill almost every day, I would feel very, very unsafe walking on that east side sidewalk, knowing that I would lose the bike lane buffer between me and traffic. There's also the question of use. There's also the question of what does adding an additional signal due to timing and to the traffic backup that's already a complete nightmare on Pleasant Hill Road right now. And I would encourage all of you, we've started a Facebook page to have an open and honest and inclusive conversation about this project and what would be best, not only for people trying to get to Acalanes High School and to this side of Lafayette, but what would be best for the people that actually live in the neighborhood and have to eat, sleep, and breathe this intersection of Pleasant Hill Road and Stanley every day of their lives, multiple times a day. It's called A Smart Route to Acalanes, and it's a Facebook group, and I welcome you to join. I welcome you to see the videos that have been posted on this Facebook group page that very clearly show the chaos that is Pleasant Hill Road and this intersection specifically in the morning. It is an absolute nightmare. And if you haven't had the pleasure of driving this route or being in this area between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Monday through Friday, or after school gets out around the 3 o'clock time frame, I welcome you to come and hang out on the corner and see what it's all about, because it's awful. And all I can imagine is adding that extra signal to the middle of the median. Not only are they going to be kind of hanging out there in the middle of a very, very busy intersection, waiting for their turn to get safely over to the sidewalk or the side of the road, it's going to add timing that would add to the backup in the traffic, which is already paralyzing to our side of the community. So for that reason, I'd just ask that we explore other options and just take this little effort that's been put forth by one human that doesn't seem to understand that there are other people in the community that, you know, need to get around and need to have a functioning infrastructure, and move forward with looking at widening the east side of Pleasant Hill Road sidewalk.
All right. Thank you for those comments. Any questions for Michelle? Thank you very much for your comments and for your letter.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Jennifer Hall. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening.
there.
I wanted to voice my support to please look for funding for the safety around school projects. There are several projects that have been in the waiting area for well over a decade. And since we have some relatively updated reports regarding the schools, I would recommend jumping on them before the reports become stale and no longer are considered attractive to obtain a grant, as we discussed this evening. I also agree there are many gaps in the pedestrian network, and I would definitely like to see them completed, especially around the schools. For instance, the city recently completed a much needed update to the walkway on Quant Road. Thank you. But it did fall short of redoing the entire walkway, and there's a much needed update on Quant Road from Del Arroyo to Pleasant Hill. The current walkway is narrow and it has a rolled curb where cars are constantly jumping up on the curb and parking, creating a hazardous situation when kids are walking to school. Updating this stretch will eliminate that dangerous situation, and it would allow for the incorporation of some safety measures to address the 2 blind curves that are on this portion of the road. This has been identified in previous school reports, and I recently detailed the issues in a TAR. Lastly, I'm not sure if a grant is needed for this, but if it is, I wanted to request adding to the list an interactive map showing residents the best paths to get from point A to point B around town and to schools with walking and biking or drop off. In the past, I've sent this commission an example of what I'm describing that was done by the city of Roseville, and I'm happy to, after the meeting, send it again to have you take a look. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one on Quant Road. You mentioned an area or gap between Del Arroyo and what was the other?
Del Arroyo, Del Arroyo up to Pleasant Hill Road.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I don't recall seeing the letter with the interactive map request. I'd be
Sure.
happy to see that again.
I will gladly send it again.
Okay. And, all right, well, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Eric Law. Please unmute yourself.
Hey, good evening, Transportation Circulation Commission. Thank you guys for your work and time. I just wanted to add a couple comments to my letter. Obviously we've had 14 letters in support of the pathway, the center median pathway down Pleasant Hill Road against the 2 against. So obviously quite a few people support this project, which is awesome. I'd also like to chime in about the East Bay Mud Aqueduct one. I think that's a phenomenal one that we should do. The school paths projects should definitely be going for more grant funding. But I don't think we should update our bikeways, walkways master plan. We've got a great plan in place. Yes, it's old, but it's got a great layout and we need to focus on going after grants to execute on it. A few projects have been built since that was done, I believe in 2006, but we got a lot more building to do. If you'll notice, the bike lockers are full now at the BART station. People are biking, riding electric scooters, commuting again, and they're doing it outside cars. The other thing to keep in mind is when the city of Lafayette built its original road, there were no studies done to determine demand. They built the roads and it filled with cars. We should not set a higher bar for active transportation that is good for our environment, good for our residents, and reduces traffic congestion. Unfortunately, more cars on the road will not reduce traffic congestion, despite some people's arguments. And the other thing to keep in mind too is every parent that drops their student off at Acalanes, that is 4 car trips a day at least. 2, one there, one home, one there, one back. And afternoon sports could be 6 car trips per kid. So there's a great opportunity to reduce traffic over there by building this dedicated path to protect our students from 4,000 to 7,000 pounds of steel. So thank you guys and look forward to continue to make Lafayette a better city.
Any questions? Go
I have a
ahead.
question. Yeah, Eric, thank you. Did you mention that your suggestion is to not update the bikeways master plan?
That is correct. The Bikeways Master Plan is pretty comprehensive in terms of covering paths around the city. And I think we need to focus our money on execution and actually building more of these paths. For example, the East Bay Aqueduct one has a lot of bits and pieces, and it really needs to be completed back behind downtown. There's an idea of doing one on Brown Avenue, which is very complementary to bringing downtown folks out to Acalanes High School, which complements the Pleasant Hill Pathway project. And people are using studies as a way to kill projects. We've done a lot of studies here at Lafayette, many more studies than we've actually built projects. So I would strongly encourage us to focus on execution and take a break from doing studies.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Next up we have Brad Rosenthal. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Just want to echo what one of the other speakers, I think her name is Jennifer Paul, said regarding Quant. The sidewalk that was not redone is actually quite hazardous, and there is 2 blind curves, one of which actually is a telephone pole going through the middle of the walkway. making it even more narrow. And then bikers actually can't even get by, and a lot of kids take their bikes to school. I actually take that road every day. Our family takes it every day. We walk our son to school, and agree that we really appreciate the work that has been done so far on the sidewalk. There is still a bit of wood to chop there. So I'd appreciate if we could all consider that. I think that'd be great. The second issue, wanted to discuss the Pleasant Hill Road pathway. A couple things. I think that the previous speaker, Mr. Law, said there was 14 for, 2 against. Not sure what the actual numbers look like prior to the meeting. So I think a bunch of people posted some letters after. So I think the numbers would be quite different than what the public comments show. In addition, the comment around 4 trips to and from at least per student, I don't think that's accurate. Most people, I think a lot of people carpool to school, either with a student or with a parent of a student. So I don't think it's actually 4 trips per student. And then if we're looking for a better solution to get 2 kids to and from with reducing cars, buses are the best option. I mean, they're used by about 10,000 school districts throughout the country. They work rain or shine. No, you don't have to worry about biking. They work if it's cold or if it's hot. You can bring your sports equipment, et cetera. So busing, I think we should actually look into increase our busing options throughout the city, and not necessarily put all the traffic issues and create a bunch of hoopla related to this project that really doesn't have a very clear demand for. And then in that light, if we actually did an analysis on the demand of this project with the students at Acalanes, which is the primary use case of this project, if there was actual demand there, then I think a lot of the neighbors could actually get behind the project, but no one has done that demand. No one surveyed students. So really, I think we should consider that work. And then also around the comment of building projects and not doing more studies, I think that's actually pretty, it sort of just lacks common sense. I mean, the reason why you do studies is to do your analysis and figure out where you want to allocate capital. I mean, in what private world would we, in the private market, we would not just build stuff. You want to do studies before you actually spend money and human capital and human resources on building projects. So quite confused by that comments that made by a fellow citizen here and how the city should be going about conducting its business. Anyway, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Would you just repeat the location of the telephone pole that was in the sidewalk, please?
Yeah, I can. I'm happy to send a screenshot of exactly where it is. But you can find it on Google Earth. But it is. It's right on Quant, in between the 2 streets that Ms.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know where that is. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Close to Delroy.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Next speaker.
That is the last speaker.
Okay. This is the last chance. If there's anybody else online.
Someone just raised their hand.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Cheryl, please unmute yourself.
I thought I'd let you know before my time starts is that when I'm looking at my screen, there's no clock. So we have no way of knowing when we're online, how many minutes have gone by.
You should see that.
All right. We'll look into that. Thanks, Cheryl.
But you can see it. If I'm watching someone in the room, we see the timer, but I don't see a timer when I'm doing Zoom.
I gotcha.
Okay. So thank you for starting my time over.
Yeah. So what's up?
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Moraga Road plan and to have you guys remember that Adele has submitted plans since Dawn Tazin and Mike Anderson were city council members. She had plans for Moraga Road pretty laid out, and she also had a bridge, the footbridge that went from Brook Street over to the school, and had a way of working that out to connect with the bike path down by Stanley. So I wanted to just engage that plan and let her, get her involved. I like the East Bay Aqueduct plan. I'm against the median, the project on Pleasant Hill Road as is. And wasn't it true that, I can't remember if it was Councilmember Geringer that wanted plans to be studied for the east end of Pleasant Hill Road, and I'm not sure where that ended up, but I have a recollection of that. And as for the school projects, way back when Mike Anderson and Don Tazen were on the city council, there was a study group that studied all these things, and the school project around Stanley were highly involved, and the school drop off of St. Mary's was loved. They had a great detailed plan on how that was going to work in and outs, and had a good study group on that. And the only other thing I wanted to say was you mentioned Topper, and I'm not sure, was it that Topper was not in wanting their street to be involved in the school project? That's my recollection. But what the people have said about the Pleasant Hill Road project in regards to the school being involved in this, they were not involved, they were never questioned, and I don't think it's going to be highly used. So I'll just say I agree with a lot of the speakers that have spoken against the project, and just leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Hold on a second. So I have not forgotten Adele's work in conjunction with the Objectives 5 process. And I had actually mentioned that a few weeks ago or a month ago to our council liaisons, and I'll be sure to bring that up when appropriate.
Her plan and also the footbridge was not a priority one, but I think it could be brought up as a priority one. I think the footbridge is over Deer Hill, over First Street, and the street are getting higher on priorities. All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any questions for Cheryl? All right.
Recording in progress.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody that provided input tonight.
I'm sorry, there's two more.
All right. Okay. No, that's all right.
So next up, we have Jamie Hession. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello,
Jamie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good evening. So I'm just tuning in and listening and realizing that we have already been down this road before. The volunteers of the Transportation Commission have already voted against the Pleasant Hill Road project. I would like to ask, any projects in the name of schools and their safety and grant funding, they should be an initiative of the school based on the student body data of safety issues, not just a proposal from Eric Law, Megan Mittman, and others to make Lafayette a bicycle utopia. And I would also like to ask for citywide the grant funding for implementation should not be asked for or received without a public approval of the project and design. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Have questions? So, okay, well, thank you for those comments.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, next up, we have Jessica Lorden, CPA. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, guys. Thanks for being here tonight. Just a really quick comment that I forget somebody else had kind of mentioned it as well, but we do have a lot of studies and a lot of information that go back, 10 plus years with a lot of great projects on them. And so while new studies I'm not disagreeing that maybe they need to be done, I think maybe we should look at the deck of information we have, and then if those particular pieces that we think are valuable need to be updated, then we pick and choose those. But I do thank you all for all your work, and I was excited to see the wide range of projects that we have going. So that's all I have to say. Thank you all.
Any questions for Jessica? Well, thank you for your comment.
And we have one more. Clarissa, please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say back to Eric's comment that there's only two people that have stated their opposition with this project. I mean, we've been on several calls with a lot of community members voting against this project. And I strongly feel that we should take the time to do the research and determine if there's a better solution than a path down the center of Pleasant Hill Road. I think that we owe it to the community to hear their needs being met and that they want to look at alternative options. And I think, you know, this is one person's crusade for a bike path that's not in the right spot down a busy street. And so I strongly urge you to go back and listen to all the recordings, all the people that opposed this in the past, and do not move forward. And that's all I have to say.
Any questions? Thank you for your comment.
And no more hands are raised.
Going once, going twice.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much for everybody that provided input. Let's see, does anybody have questions of Patrick about anything they've heard from speakers or any other questions that they had? Let's start with that, because I think there's one question I had. Anybody else first?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So regarding updating the walkways and bikeways master plans, is it necessary? Why is it necessary?
I believe it is. If you look at the existing plan, for example, in terms of a vision, it's reflective, I think, of the time from 15 to 20 years ago, which is class 2 bikeways are, you know, what we should be aspiring to. For example, on Deer Hill Road, when we could aspire to so much more, even given the right of way we have, as an example, from the East Bay Mud Aqueduct Healthway. So I think the plan should articulate a new vision, and that is going to help us be more competitive in getting grant funding.
Okay,
Conditions have changed. Conditions have changed too. It should reflect not only what we built, but also what the vision is of the city.
Thank you.
Comments, questions?
Well, I had a question on the walkways plan. And I know we've kind of talked about revisiting it. It's, now been at least 8 years, I think, since it's been looked at. And I was just looking at the number of, priority projects in there. And I think a lot have subsequently been completed. So I don't know, I certainly, I think we'll talk about it. I mean, I think the Acalanes Road project is obviously deserving, as are others in here as well. And I think it would be helpful to at least have a better idea of, where we stand, what's still out there in terms of these projects that need to be completed or that were recommended, 8 years ago. And is that still the appropriate ranking, I guess?
So what I've done recently with the help of the summer intern is created a giant map that shows both the bikeways and walkways, existing conditions, and in terms of, and also the level of facility of each. So, is it a proper sidewalk? Is it, a gravel, side of the street? And then also have taken a look at the priority projects from the Walkways Master Plan and identified what's been complete and where the gap still exists. So I am coming. I've been wanting to make sure that Bart was here for that conversation. So we'll prepare that for soon. Another transfer meeting in the very near future.
Great. Yeah, it'd be helpful.
Yeah, it'd be great. It's going to be a great first step in updating those master plans, just even understanding what's on the ground today.
Yeah, that's great. And so they walked whatever sidewalk there was.
Yeah, because much of their work was actually going out to all the drainage inlets and putting the stamp on top that warns you that anything in there would go. So they have been all over the city, and so as they were doing that, they were documenting the pedestrian and bike facilities.
Excellent.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
And including pathways.
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, all the way up to concrete sidewalks.
yeah,
Okay, great.
not the trails.
Just the funny path.
What's on the road, on the roads? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
the asphalt with the berm.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have several questions. and then some kind of comments also. First, regarding Mr. Russell's comments and his letters, just to recap that, so he's going to be pursuing a traffic calming through the normal traffic calming process, right? And that's what I heard, okay? Then regarding the sidewalk, I heard you say that you're going to be meeting with them for on-site visit, is that
Yes,
correct?
I also put it back to the traffic calming, and Mr. Russell did articulate this, but Officer Conley has been out there
Yes.
doing his with his the Slow Down Lafayette campaign with the speed radar
Yes.
signs. So he is putting together a kind of a before and after study
That's great.
on Aquinas Road, which is wonderful.
Okay, and that, thank you, and that ties in with another question. Another person in one of their letters or is asked about what's happening with the slow down data. And so just to recap, that police department is going to be giving you that data, and you're going to be looking through it and incorporating it into the projects and giving us feedback on that. Is that
That's right,
correct?
but he will also be putting it on the Slow Down Lafayette webpage on the city's website.
Thank you. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I wanted to comment really briefly and get your response about, we heard about, or let me say it differently. I received many letters from the public on these issues today that were past the deadline. And I want everybody to understand that when you send letters in for the Transportation Commission, it's okay to send letters to us, but you really need to copy somebody at City Hall, either ideally Patrick or Therese Kane or the city clerk. We have to be really careful when we get public input that's addressed to all of the transportation members, that we don't reply to those messages in a way that might trigger the Brown Act violations. So that's just one thing. So just be careful that when you send in comments, please be sure to include staff or somebody at the city on that. Then the other thing is, for the comments that were received later, my understanding is that those will be provided to the city council when this matter, the Pleasant Hill Road comes up in sometime in October. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we have got letters, but we couldn't address them because they weren't timely. So, okay. Any comments on that? All good. Okay. So I guess the next question then is, what do we want to do? We've heard a lot of stuff. We've talked about things. Do we want to do any other further recommendations to staff in terms of priorities or anything else at this time? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have one. So for the Pleasant Hill Road Central Median Multi-Use Pathway project, I'm not comfortable advancing it in the current description before we get information from Matt about the potentials for east side signalization or stop signs, Caltrans off ramps. I think there was one other aspect you mentioned he is looking at. Or maybe I was.
Well, it was, you know, with or without signalization at the on and off ramps, and any, you know, right of way issues associated with the east side right of way. Also issues with fire and police.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Fire and police, yeah. And then the Akalani's request from Mayor and Dory to communicate with them.
Yes.
It was in that.
Yeah.
In that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's just premature to say, yes, keep that on the list of candidate projects.
I would second that. I mean, I think we addressed it at our April meeting, and I think until there's, you know, change in the design or planning, there's not really a recommendation to make at this point.
Although one person, I believe, or two people, public made comment about supporting a grant application for an east side study.
was it, as I recall, this commission made that recommendation to council in April as part of the overall report on the Pathways project. And it wasn't acted on.
It was, it wasn't.
It was not.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was the request for continue design or don't continue design. And so, that was the decision point.
I thought it was, well, okay.
I think we
I thought it was an
added-
and. but
Yeah, there was an and to, corridor study.
Yeah.
I think, but specifically, I mean, we've seen a lot of public comment about east side feasibility, and we had comment from Jared today about supporting a study. And since we're talking about studies in this and finding grant money for studies, it just seems like that one makes sense, for me.
Okay. So you want to highlight that as a need or as a priority for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think an alternative analysis is really what the public's asking for. So, and this is being our master list of ideas to look for funding for studying, then yeah.
Okay. Bart, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't quite understand what you want to do with this, with that. Though. You want to remove this and you want to replace it with,
Well, no, I mean, I think just hold perhaps until we have this information that Matt's bringing to council next week or next month, rather.
so in terms of this list that we're considering right now, we'll go to the city council. What would that look like?
I guess pull it out and then add it potentially later. I don't know. I mean, I was surprised that it was here, to be honest, because this is the description as it's always been, and yet we know that there's work on looking at research and refinements. So I think we need that.
What is a major project and there is ongoing planning, that is ongoing to support it. I don't know if it's, at this point, it would be a real candidate for grant or a grant application because there's still a lot of, the design is still in process. We don't have firm cost figures for that. So I think there's other programs that would probably be considered for application before this one. But I mean, considering its status, I think that and the fact that the city council has made a decision to support or to continue the process as it exists right now. I would think it's valid to keep it on the list.
Will this report go to the city council before Matt's report or after? Do you know?
Likely not before, no, because Matt's is going to the first city council meeting that Joanne can fit him in, right?
Yes.
So the ones prior to that are too busy, full.
So when this item gets to the city council, they will have already heard Matt's report and additional public input on it. Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess I would prefer that this text be as
Updated.
Yeah, updated, exactly.
Okay. I mean, it's fair.
And
In the council report.
I suppose, I mean, I guess I just don't feel comfortable saying include it and vote on it now in the current state. Given that there's the outstanding information. I mean, if we knew the information. I might support it, I might not, I just don't know. And so I think I'm just more comfortable not putting it on hold or just.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Bart that it's just a big project. There's no ask there. It's just, I think it's nice to keep it on the list for now. It's gonna be, we'll need to update it. I guess the question then, if it stays on the list, will that impact, grant applications? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not opposed to, removing it from the list. I mean, these are all just sort of potential projects, should they arise, but I don't think at this point. I think there's other potential projects in here that, one are further down the road and eligible, and and we can probably break some of these into like the planning and design phase and then the actual construction phase. I don't know that it would be a high priority at this point until there's more information about the design and construction of it.
Okay, so would you guys recommend that we don't have it on the report?
I think it could, kind of remain on there as, pending TBD, once there's more information.
Okay.
But I think there's, if grants come up, there's been a lot of work done on schools, and there are, identified projects there that are significantly cheaper. And, we had a couple of community members comment on that. We've talked about the, if there are planning grants, I would think that the bikeways and walkways plans, should be, we should encourage Patrick to look at funding for those. The, Moraga Road plan is a big one, especially with the timing coming up. I think that would be a focus. I guess to me, those are the ones that sort of jump out as ones that we would want to encourage and prioritize.
Right. So that's very good point. So the question also is, back to the earlier discussion, priorities really matter when there's need for staff to apply for two things at once, almost. That's kind of, so do we handle prioritization ad hoc, or did you want to come up with a process for ranking all of the items? And to your point, should we separate them into planning and construction? I mean, design and construction versus planning? I'm throwing those out as.
Well, I think at the very beginning, we established that we weren't going to do priorities.
Okay.
And I think we shouldn't do priorities. I think what we do is we come up with a basket of projects that have been approved, vetted and approved, and Patrick has those available, and we can take a look at the grant opportunity to determine which are in the best position to submit an application for, and I trust he can do a very good job of that. Just look at the for the Pleasant Hill Pleasant Hill Road project. It says very clearly that planning is still is still in design phase. It's probably not as ready as other projects for a grant application. So I think that would be considered by staff and would probably influence, whether applications would be submitted for it. But I think it deserves, just by its size and the discussion that has taken place around this, I think it deserves to have visibility in this group, in this basket. So I think it should remain. I mean, we can tweak the language if we think it's appropriate, but I think it should have visibility in this.
Yeah, I think right now it is for a single design, and I guess that's the part that I'm stuck on, where we haven't looked at alternatives. So if this were written to enhance Mount Diablo to Stanley Boulevard, Deer Hill Road, to improve bikeability, then that would work for me. But to be so specific about one very, very, very unique design is where I'm just stuck on. I mean, candidate to me sounds like, yeah, if there's money right there, it's a candidate, let's go with it. So I just don't feel that right now, the uncertainty there puts it under the heading candidate for me.
Okay. So what should we do? Leave it as it is now, or do you want to ask? Because we're not going to see this report. The question is, how does it influence Patrick's decisions in the future? Right. And then stuff coming back. Do you want to ask him? I mean, specifically, should we ask him to change anything in the wording of this, or note that should be revisited after Matt goes to the city council?
I think that makes sense.
I mean, it may well change significantly when depending on the report and then council's input.
All right. My preference at this point would be not to change it and just see what happens, and then if we need to come back and change it, we can.
So
I-
to put an asterisk on it or something.
Sure.
That says this will come back to Transer after Matt presents to city council.
Sure, I mean, I'm open to that. And do you have any thoughts, Patrick, on bringing the report back with changes to one or more items?
It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, well, one question, I mean, Patrick, I assume you'd envision this as a sort of ongoing basket of projects that you're, carrying along with you as grants come and,
Yeah.
some new ones will come in, some old ones might drop out and the priorities might change depending, so.
Right.
Okay.
How often should we revisit this reporting process? I mean, is this something once a year or, that gets back to my idea of, well, how often are you applying for things and what's next coming up? Yeah.
Right.
Um,
It could be on the year or year and a half list, just to provide an update and whether new priorities have been identified, add it to the list. That's fine. Actually, that makes sense.
I'd be more comfortable with once a year than a year and a half, but we have limited timing. I also wonder about adding, I brought this up, but I don't know the downtown plan. I mean, that I don't know what's coming back. I know there's just going to be a study of the Mount Diablo part, and then there's a Moraga part, but do we specifically need to call out a downtown plan of some sort? I only mention that because Mayor Anduri had in various public forums called it out, I think, as that, but is that something that should be in here?
I don't believe so because it's being led by the planning department, number one, and I believe that they, although I'm not 100% sure, but they may have identified funding for that.
Okay. All right. Other comments or?
Well, I hate to keep going back, but have we given you clear? I mean, with this Pleasant Hill Road, have we been clear? Do you have, what
I
we're
won't
asking?
apply for funding between now and the time that Matt.
No, I just, we've been talking a lot about this. I don't know.
No.
Really clear to you on what we're asking, so.
Yes,
If you're.
receive council input on whether or not there's interest in exploring alternative alignments along the corridor. Bring this topic specific to Pleasant Hill Road back to Transer after the October council meeting with Matt, with potentially a revised project description.
Thank you. You have much clearer writing than I do.
Are there anything else that we need to talk about? We've gotten a lot of public and got some of our input on this. Is everybody comfortable with where we're at? Do we need any further actions?
No, I think this is great, because I know that early on, we heard some comments from the public that, we weren't being very transparent on, what we were going, what grant funds we were going after in order to support certain projects. So I think that, being very upfront about this, being proactive and having this discussion in a public forum, I think is very helpful. So.
I agree, but I have a detail that I wanted to address. I think I alluded to it, but just to be clear, for traffic study, right turn on red, restrictions and Moraga Road safety and circulation, to me, it seems like those could be combined.
That's fine. That's fine.
I mean, part of them are both planning design, there's a traffic study aspect of it, roadway lane configurations perhaps on one, so it's. It's a system right there.
It's a system. The question is whether or not you want to defer safety improvements at that intersection subject to another potential process.
Good question.
I personally think that you can make those changes, you should just do them because, you know, if a study comes up and says that's not right, or there's something additional, then it's either incremental or you just take it off. I mean,
Mhm.
if we got the funding and the engineering's ready to go, there's such a long delay in installing anything. I hate to wait.
Mhm.
It's fine.
Yeah, okay, no, I'm good with that. Right, the idea of combining them.
I would like to just mention again, the idea of all the school projects. It would be good to figure out how to have more visibility to what projects we can, you know, are pending, or in the medium and long term realm. So that if you have opportunities for funding, you can jump on them and not have to dig at that point, dig back through the other studies. I don't, that makes sense. So, okay, that's my comments, and are we good for now? And if not, we can bring it up, you know, bring it up at any meeting under the commissioner reports and ask for more action.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Okay, so if there's no objection, let's close item 7 and move on to commissioner and staff reports, which you had something you wanted to tell us, Patrick.
Stella stole my thunder, but yeah, we were successful in 2 grant applications, which is great news. Our local road safety plan was approved. I can't remember if that happened after the last transfer meeting, but I think it was. So that was adopted by council on August 28th. So my next step is to go through the list of kind of next steps. And start to move forward on, okay, now what? So that's on my immediate to-do list. But great news that we now have a local road safety plan and are eligible for some grant funding that otherwise we wouldn't have been.
Yeah, it's great. That was great. I also want to say thank you for that efforts on that, and for the public and everybody else. There are some really good websites now associated with the city that there's one for the LRSP. There's one for the Slow Down campaign, which as Patrick mentioned, the data will eventually end up there. And so there's good websites the city has started up and is maintaining around transportation issues. So encourage everybody to go and dig through the websites. Anything else?
Oh, I just want to say thank you to Public Works and Patrick for all the work this summer on the Pathways projects. Got a lot done.
Yeah.
You've heard all the requests.
Yeah, right. That's
You're
true.
the front line there. So yeah, no, it's really great to see all that work and see all the people using them.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that because I know the engineering team works very hard to get things right. And from what I've seen on the Release Valley Road pathway, the redo it looks really nice. So that's and also the pathway to Spring Hill School along Pleasant Hill Road. That's also nice. So,
yeah, it's fabulous improvement.
So thanks to the engineering team. All right, anything else?
GPAC.
Yes.
GPAC. So GPAC's been a little bit of a hiatus. Council approved the safety element or adopted it recently, and the planning staff have been working on the housing element. And so GPAC's been on a bit of a hold, and we may be meeting in October, possibly, to start on whatever the next element is, which may be land use, but it's not transportation. Okay. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe they were switching everything around, but yeah, so that is the story of that. Oh, I do have one quick question. Pleasant Hill Road, the radar feedback signs, they're good. They're getting triggered all the time. Everyone who goes by there is being told slow down. And I'm just wondering if Andy has any any room in his schedule for his black boxes to measure the speeds between the schools, between Acalanes and Spring Hill.
I don't know, but I can ask.
That would be great. I think he only measured one direction, I think the southbound. We don't have any data on northbound. And the concern there is that at least going northbound, the radar feedback sign is pretty close to the intersection of Stanley. And so once people pass it, they just start flying. And it's the Spring Hill intersection that's also really vulnerable. It's also around a curve. And so it's not visible until you're a ways up the road. So I guess it's my observation, and it would be great to get some actual data. In my mind, if people really are going in excess after the speed radar feedback sign, then maybe the sign itself is not in the right spot. In a way to minimize their speeds before they get to the Spring Hill intersection. And maybe the same thing on the southbound, but I just haven't observed that one. So you've probably driven that and seen it.
I rarely come down the hill that direction, but it's, I
Yeah,
mean, I've seen it, but I don't have any feedback on it.
yeah, I should drive the southbound some more and just look and see kind of where it is in relation to the Spring Hill intersection.
All right.
That's it.
Well, thank you, everybody here and online, and it is now 8:53 PM and this meeting is adjourned. All right.